Okay guys, now we move to question 3, which is about explaining the pathophysiology of what's actually happening in a type 1 reaction. Now, from what we talked about initially, as part of the pre-learning, we know that with allergic reactions there's triggers. And we know that there is an initial phase, and that where you first meet the trigger, you have your very first bit of peanut butter. And there's a subsequent phase which happens the next time you eat the peanut butter. And we know that if this process is not treated and recognised and treated appropriately, our end point here is death. Now, link the two. What happens in between? Over to you. Nick, you can scribe, grab the pen.
Okay.
So I want you guys to think in terms of what cells are doing the work and what mediators or communicators between the cells are connecting these cells that do the work. And when we get down to the end, I want you to think about what organ systems are doing the work. You know, we move the molecules, cells, tissues and organs.
Okay. So I put master cells there because that's one I wanted to remember. We'll come back to that. The initial cell is the antigen presenting cell.
Yep.
And that is taking up the trigger which is presented to it, which could be venom, like a bee sting.
Yep. Let's stand over here, Nick, so that the class can see you a bit better.
Could be a food.
Yep.
Could be a drug, like a medicine, a drug.
Penicillin, something like that. Yep. Sure.
So the APC, so these things are ingested or the person is exposed to them via the skin or the mucosal surfaces.
Yep, or injected in penicillin.
Injected, yep.
Or drugs.
And then the APC can break the protein down into peptides.
Yep.
And they are then presented to T helper 2 cells.
Yeah, that's right. And communication. How are these cells communicating?
So there's cellular messengers, intercellular messages like cytokines.
Yep.
And
I'd like, for the purposes of this, I'd like to call these cytokines in general rather than give us individual names here, because then we'll be here all week.
The T helper 2 cells cause clonal expansion of B cells, clonal meaning that all the B cells are doing the same thing.
Yep.
And that is they're making IgE specific for the antigen.
Yep.
And there's something going on in the individual. Genes, epigenetic things, and environment.
Exactly.
Which are causing this to happen in the individual and not just for everyone.
That's exactly right. And one of our intercession tasks is going to be to think about what has happened in the environment and in our genes over the last few decades to mean that the rates of allergies is increasing. So you're right. We'll extend on that more in the next session.
In the subsequent exposure, the trigger binds to the specific IgE.
Where? When you're looking at this diagram at home, guys, you should be thinking about, you do well to think about what cells and what mediators, but you also need to be thinking where in the body are these processes happening.
Oh, okay, so the mast cell has got the IgE on it.
Yep. Well, the mast cell's got some little receptors on the surface, doesn't it?
Yep.
Yep, you're right, those Fc epsilon receptors.
Okay, and IgE stuck to that.
Yep.
And then the trigger binds to the IgE,
yep,
causing cross-linking.
Yep.
And then degranulation.
Yep.
Of the mast cell.
Of what? Of what?
So the mast cell releases more histamine and tryptase.
Yep. And many other mediators, many.
I'll put nitric oxide.
Yep.
And platelet activating factor.
Yep.
And some of the other ones.
Yep.
And these have effects on various organs, which can then lead to death.
Okay, so let's. They also act on the organs, but what else do they do? What else do they do?
They cause more degranulation.
Yep. So let's have some arrows showing what they do.
So like a positive feedback
Totally.
system, so that
Yep.
it's augmented.
Yep.
Okay. Should I break it into organs here?
Well, let's just pick one organ, just for
Okay.
our purposes. Let's talk about, well, do whatever you like. Talk about circulation, putting in the circulation. Because we know that in adults, at least, the most common cause of death is actually circulatory failure.
So in circulation, there's vessels get wider, larger.
Yep. Anyone got a better name for vessels getting wider?
Vessels dilate.
Yep. Vasodilatation, that's right.
And then that will in turn cause low blood pressure.
Mm-hmm. And something else happens to the vessels.
Small vessels get leaky.
They do. And what leaks out?
Fluid is leaking out.
Yep.
So the capillaries, which are more tightly bound, can release some fluid.
Yeah, but they obviously only leak so far because we don't have blood leaking out, we've just got the fluid. So the cellular components of blood tend to be staying in the blood.
So that will also lead to low blood pressure.
Yeah.
So there's two ways to lead to low blood pressure, and if you get enough low blood pressure, you can get death.
How?
If there's not enough blood to the brain or the heart,
Mm-hmm.
you can get death.
Yeah, that's very good indeed. And if we just think about some of the signs that our girl's got, we've already know that she's pale.
The pallor could be due to low blood pressure
Yeah.
or low.
Yeah, I mean it varies. It varies. Some anaphylaxis will have a marked cutaneous or skin reaction, and they will just look like bright red histamine. But especially in some adults or older or typical presentations, the predominant presentations are circulation, so they can look pale, which is how anaphylaxis can get missed.
Can I put in respiratory tract?
You can.
And I might put in here the upper,
Yep.
because someone can have a...
Yeah, because we've talked about she's got stridor and wheeze going on. I've talked to you guys. We've just talked about what they are and the difference, and it's basically referring to air makes a noise when it goes to a smaller opening.
So that could
Simple
cause
as that.
swelling and not enough oxygen.
Yeah, and how's that going to give us death?
Well, if there's not enough oxygen to the brain or the heart,
Mm-hmm.
that in turn could cause death, and
Mm-hmm.
you could get a feed. If there's not enough blood to the heart, you may even get more low blood pressure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
So
not enough oxygen going into the lungs.
and what's the medical term for not enough oxygen, people?
Like hypoxia.
Yeah, it's great. Well, hypoxia's not great, but you get the idea.
Okay.
All right, let's call it quick. Let's move on, and then next we will probably go on to discuss a bit more what's happening in the skin, in the gastrointestinal tract, in the lower respiratory tract,
And the brain.
and the brain. Great, good.
Thank you.
Well done.